Rob Reiner has spent a lifetime moving through Hollywood's most dangerous currents. He's directed some of the most cherished films in American history and lived long enough to see what was hidden beneath the surface. But when the conversation turns to the men and women who defined Hollywood's so-called golden age, something changes. His voice tightens. His face goes cold. The public treats them like legends, Reiner once said quietly. They have no idea who these people really were. To him, Hollywood's golden era wasn't built on magic or art. It was built on silence, on cruelty disguised as charm, on abuse buried under box office numbers. The same stars who shaped American cinema shattered lives behind closed doors, shielded by studios that chose profit over morality again and again. For decades, Reiner stayed quiet. Now, he isn't anymore. These are the 7 actors whose darkness he says can no longer be ignored. If you want the truth about Hollywood's most protected legends, subscribe now. What comes next may permanently change how you see classic cinema. Errol Flynn, the predator behind the smile. Long before James Dean became Rebellion, before Marlon Brando reshaped acting, Errol Flynn was Hollywood's definition of dangerous charm. In the 1930s and 40s, audiences saw him as the perfect swashbuckler, bold, fearless, irresistible. But when Rob Reiner looks at Flynn's legacy, he sees something else entirely. He wasn't a hero, Reiner said in a rare interview. He was a predator who used fame like a weapon. Born in Tasmania in 1909, Flynn arrived in Hollywood armed with charisma and ambition. Warner Brothers built a star machine around him after Captain Blood turned him into an overnight sensation. But behind the polished image, something was already rotting. Flynn's excesses were legendary: alcohol, drugs, and a fixation on young women that spiraled out of control. Studio executives knew. They always knew. But Flynn was too valuable to stop. Everything came crashing down in 1942 when 2 teenage girls, Peggy Satterlee and Betty Hansen, accused him of statutory rape. The trial consumed the nation, dividing the public between those who believed the girls and those who refused to abandon their idol. Flynn treated the courtroom like a stage. He smirked through testimony. He joked with reporters. Warner Brothers deployed elite lawyers and, according to later accounts, quietly ensured key witnesses disappeared or changed their stories. Flynn was acquitted, but his reputation never fully recovered. What disturbs Reiner most isn't the verdict, it's what followed. Flynn didn't stop. Decades later, private letters revealed him bragging about his exploits, mocking women who feared him, treating harm like a punchline. He died in 1959, at just 50 years old, his body destroyed by years of addiction. The autopsy listed heart failure, cirrhosis, and ulcers. Reiner believes the truth was simpler. He died the way he lived, taking everything, giving nothing back. Hollywood protected him because he was profitable. That's the part history avoids. Kirk Douglas, the tyrant who ruled through fear. Kirk Douglas embodied Hollywood's greatest contradiction. On screen, he played honor, strength, and justice. Off screen, he was a force of unchecked rage. Reiner, who studied Douglas's performances while learning his craft, eventually saw through the image. "There's anger under that smile," he said, "the kind that never sleeps, the kind that destroys people." Born Isor Danilovich in 1916 to poor Russian immigrants, Douglas fought his way out of poverty through sheer will. By the time Spartacus made him a global icon, he had it all: power, money, respect, and it made him worse. Crew members described working with Douglas as navigating a minefield. His temper was explosive, humiliating, and unpredictable. He didn't just want to control scenes, he needed to dominate everyone around him. Actress Deborah Paget later said he treated co-stars like obstacles instead of collaborators. Directors struggled to rein him in. Stanley Kubrick, who worked with Douglas twice, called him the most driven man he'd ever met and the hardest to manage. That drive often masked cruelty disguised as perfectionism. Assistants left in tears. Actors lived in fear of mistakes. But the darkest accusations surfaced decades later. For years, rumors circulated that Douglas raped Natalie Wood when she was just 16. The allegation became public after Wood's death and was confirmed by her sister, Lana Wood, in a 2018 memoir. Douglas was never charged. The story disappeared beneath the same machinery that protected powerful men for generations. When he died in 2020, at 103, Hollywood flooded the media with tributes. Reiner's response was quiet but sharp. Talent doesn't erase evil. It just makes people look away. Faye Dunaway, cruelty as control. If Flynn represented predatory charm and Douglas embodied unchecked rage, Faye Dunaway represented something colder, cruelty as precision. Reiner points to her as proof that Hollywood's darkness doesn't always arrive violently. Sometimes, he says, it arrives through control, humiliation, and an ego large enough to crush everyone nearby. Born in Florida in 1941, Dunaway's rise was explosive. From Bonnie and Clyde to Chinatown, she became untouchable, magnetic, brilliant, worshipped. But behind the camera, a different reputation followed her. Crew members whispered about tantrums, impossible demands, and assistants treated as disposable. Her former Mommy Dearest co-star, Ritanya Alda, described it bluntly. You could feel the fear on set. Everyone waited for her to explode. The irony was brutal. While portraying Joan Crawford, infamous for abusing her children, Dunaway reportedly mirrored that same behavior toward her crew. Director Frank Perry later admitted he considered quitting due to her violent outbursts. She screamed at makeup artists, threw objects, refused to shoot unless the lighting made her look divine. Reiner calls her a case study in emotional terrorism, what happens when control becomes a weapon. The incidents kept piling up. On The Wicked Lady, she allegedly slapped a cameraman. On John DeJuan DeMarco, productions halted as assistants were publicly humiliated. Her former manager Jay Bernstein once said, "Faye doesn't just play power, she enforces it." Divas, she didn't just play them, she became them. By the early 2000s, her reputation finally caught up with her. Directors stopped calling, producers quietly passed. In 2011, after being fired from a Broadway revival, Dunaway blamed everyone except herself. Reiner's judgment was sharp but measured. She chased perfection so relentlessly that she abandoned empathy. And talent without compassion eventually turns inward and self-destructs. Hollywood gave her everything. What it received in return was pain. 4. John Wayne, the bully wrapped in patriotism. Few figures loomed over Hollywood like John Wayne. To millions, he was America, the fearless cowboy, the noble soldier, the ultimate symbol of masculine virtue. But Rob Reiner, who grew up idolizing Wayne's westerns, eventually recognized something darker beneath the myth. When I learned who he really was, Reiner reflected, I stopped seeing a hero. I saw a bully wearing patriotism like armor. Born Marion Morrison in 1907, Wayne climbed the studio system by projecting absolute toughness. By the 1950s, he wasn't just an actor, he was an ideology. He viewed dissent as weakness and change as betrayal. On set, Wayne ruled through intimidation. Crew members who fell short were publicly humiliated. Actor Christopher Mitchum recalled, "When Duke got angry, the temperature dropped. You either agreed or you disappeared." His cruelty didn't stop there. He mocked indigenous actors on Western sets, belittled women publicly, dismissed black performers who challenged stereotypes. His 1971 Playboy interview remains one of Hollywood's most disturbing records. Wayne claimed Native Americans were selfish for holding land, said Black Americans weren't ready for self-governance, insisted films needed men, not complainers. It wasn't patriotism, it was prejudice. During The Searchers, Wayne clashed with director John Ford over how to portray Ethan Edwards, a racist Confederate soldier. Ford pushed for complexity, Wayne demanded sympathy. Reiner, who studied that performance in film school, said the result is chilling. You can't tell where the character ends and the man begins. Even as cancer claimed his body, Wayne never apologized. He dismissed critics as weak and blamed cultural change for his isolation. He died in 1979, still celebrated as an icon. To Reiner, his legacy became a warning. Power rooted in prejudice doesn't mature into wisdom, it rots into bitterness. 5. Roman Polanski, Brilliance in Exile. To Rob Reiner,